It was the kind of night that tested the strength of even the hardest souls. Snow fell in heavy sheets, whipping across the dark highway, turning the road into a frozen battlefield. Visibility was nearly gone, the howling wind drowning out the roar of engines. 15 bikers, leather jackets stiff with ice, struggled against the storm, their headlights dimmed under the relentless blizzard. They were tough men and women, used to long rides, danger, and brotherhood. But this storm didn't care who they were. It was merciless. "Keep going," their leader, a tall man named Rick, shouted over the wind, his voice nearly lost. But deep down, even he knew, they couldn't last much longer. Their bikes slipped and skidded. Their bodies were freezing. Hope was fading fast. And then, through the swirling snow, they saw it. A faint light glowing in the distance, a small wooden house, perched at the edge of the forest, smoke curling from the chimney. It looked like something out of a dream. They pulled in, engines sputtering, breath ragged. The storm hulled around them, threatening to bury the world in white. Rick hesitated. They were strangers here. Who would open their door in the dead of night for a gang of cold, wet bikers? He raised his hand to knock, unsure what kind of reception they'd get. The door creaked open before his knuckles touched the wood. Standing there was a frail old woman, her silver hair tied in a bun, her eyes soft but sharp with wisdom. She looked at the 15 bikers shivering on her porch, and without a single word, she stepped aside. "Come in, children," she said gently. "You'll freeze to death out here." The warmth hit them like a blessing. The smell of burning wood, the crackle of the fireplace, and the sight of blankets neatly folded on the couch made something ache deep in their chests. These men and women who were used to being judged, feared, and sometimes hated, were welcomed like family. She moved with quiet strength, pulling out pots, heating broth, handing out blankets. "I don't have much," she said with a humble smile, "but you'll have enough to make it through the night." The bikers were stunned. They were used to suspicion, to doors closing in their faces, to people clutching their purses or crossing the street. But this old lady, who lived alone in a small house on a lonely road, opened her home without question. Rick sat near the fire, staring into the flames, his hands shaking, not just from cold, but from something deeper. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you don't even know us. Why would you let us in?" She looked at him with kind but piercing eyes. "Because kindness doesn't ask who you are. It just knows when you're in need." The words struck every biker in the room. For the first time in a long time, many of them felt safe. Not judged. Not feared. Just human. They stayed the night, listening to the storm rage outside, their bellies warmed with soup, their bodies wrapped in blankets. Some of them dozed off by the fire. Others sat awake, thinking about the life they'd lived and the kindness they'd just received. By morning, the storm had passed. The sun peeked through the clouds, glittering on fields of untouched snow. The bikers went outside to check their rides, and froze. Not from the cold, but from shock. Parked outside the old woman's house were not just their 15 motorcycles, but nearly 100 more. Rows and rows of bikes lined the road, their chrome glinting in the morning sun. Dozens of bikers stood there, waiting quietly, some with flowers in their hands, others holding bags of food, firewood, and supplies. Word had spread overnight. One of the 15 had messaged a friend, telling him about the old lady's kindness. That friend told another. And soon, the entire brotherhood of bikers in the region rode out, not to take, but to give. The old lady stepped outside, her wrinkled hands shielding her eyes from the bright snow. Her mouth fell open as she saw the endless line of bikes. "My goodness," she whispered. One by one, the bikers approached her. They shook her hand. They hugged her gently. They left bags of groceries, stacked firewood by her shed, handed her envelopes with money, and promised to keep her safe. Rick turned to her with tears in his eyes. "Last night, you thought you were helping us. But the truth is, you healed something inside us we didn't know was broken. And now, it's our turn." From that day forward, she was never alone again. Every weekend, bikers would visit her. They mowed her lawn in the summer, shoveled snow in the winter, repaired her roof when it leaked. And whenever she made soup, they all swore it was the best they'd ever tasted. For the bikers, that night changed everything. They realized that kindness wasn't weakness, it was the strongest force in the world. And for the old lady, who once lived in quiet solitude, her home became a gathering place of laughter, stories, and an unlikely family born from a snowstorm. Message to viewers. This story reminds us of a simple truth: sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can ignite a chain reaction far greater than we can imagine. The old lady had no idea her choice would inspire an entire community. But that's the power of compassion. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below what kindness means to you, or share a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your life. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Be kind always. Because together, we can spread the power of kindness, one story at a time.